Welcome back to the show. You're watching Morning Live. Good to be in your company. Now we're going to focus in on sports, and as we celebrate this year's Human Rights Day dedicated to fight racism, we look at the role that sport plays in that very fight. Abroad, much has been done in football when it comes to fighting racism, with FIFA and Uefa running campaigns highlighting the need for stamping out intolerance based on skin colour. At home, South Africans drove the Global Watch campaign, No to Racism in Sport. In the USA, there have been incidences in their biggest sport codes, the NFL and the NBA. And the race debate reared its head once again in rugby ahead of last year's World Cup, a sport that has been a symbol of unity and division in equal measures at different times. The Proteas women and men's T20 series against the West Indies and Australia respectively were dedicated to showing support to the Anti-Racism Network of South Africa, a network representing more than 80 organisations around the country. And they've been observing Anti-Racism Week, which culminates today. One of the foundations forming part of the network is the Nelson Mandela Foundation. Their CEO, Sello Hatang, now joins us. A very good morning and welcome to Morning Live.
Good morning, Vela. Thank you very much.
Let's start with that very simple question. What role does sport have to play in this fight against racism?
I think if the 80s in the anti-apartheid struggle taught us anything, is that you can not have a normal sport in a normal society. That's why you had sanctions against South Africa, the apartheid South Africa, when it comes to sport. So this time we said there is one thing that unites South Africans, and it's sport. So whether it be the rugby or the football and the cricket, we thought let's approach all these associations and say contribute, make a contribution towards raising awareness about the issue of racism again, which has reared its head one more time. And the hashtag that we used with all of them was take on racism, because we believe that when we do that, we have a responsibility to then change how South Africans see themselves in terms of race relations. You'll remember that one of the moments that captured the South African imagination was the Rugby World Cup, when Madiba came out in the, with a rugby shirt. And we're saying if Madiba could do it back then, and Madiba said at the time that sport can unite people more than anything else can, so we believe that it can do it again.
But how is that possible? Because we have seen global campaigns trying to achieve the very same thing. But it seems as if no matter how much spotlight is being shone on this epidemic of racism, it just seems to be there and it continues.
You know, one of these things, racism is one of these things that you cannot just think that you'll take the pill and then it's gone. You remember that with so many years of oppression, people just have gotten used to discriminating, that it becomes important for you to keep drumming in that message. And I think what Madiba said at the end of Long Walk to Freedom, to say the long walk continues, I think it's precisely what he meant there, because racism in many countries that have gone through this, look at the US, it's been at it for hundreds of years. We're 22 years after our liberation, so we should never lose hope of that message that says we must do something in all facets of South African life to deal with racism. And sport is key to that unity, or where people forget about race, at least for as long as the game plays. And for us, we need to then be saying, let's go back to the basics and change how we view each other in the sporting field.
I mentioned the Global Watch campaign, and that's something that you guys were also involved with when it was actually launched, say no to racism in sport. What have been some of the achievements through that organisation?
I think one of the things that we've managed to do is to get the global community to participate in our struggle against racism. We were involved with the Doha Goals Foundation and the Sekhualet Foundation to say, how do we change the narrative about sport and racism? And we were happy that some of the sporting codes which committed themselves up front include rugby, for example. Cricket also came on board, and football. And I think what we're doing now with the Anti-Racism Week, we're saying, let's end this point of the Anti-Racism Week on a high, That's why Rugby yesterday dedicated the whole weekend to Anti-Racism Week. And we're saying, let's take on racism. Let's talk about it in our homes. Let's talk about it on our playing fields. Let's learn about it. How do you, to learn about how one discriminates, and also to talk about, share stories about our own discrimination, experiences of discrimination.
How do we actually make that into workable solutions? Because commitments can be made. People can say, I commit to this, I pledge to this. I know there's been calls to make pledges to stand up against racism in South Africa. But how do you actually work that into the minds and more especially the hearts of South Africans?
Practically, you have to take the battle to our homes. You have to take this battle to around the dinner tables. You have to take this battle to our braais, when we have our braais. And I think until such time that the different coaches, the different sport managers, the different players say that you do the discrimination not in my name. And it's that call that says, if you do this kind of thing of discriminating against another, you're not doing it in my name. Because with people, it's easy to even not see color when it's a good player. People would forget that that's a black player who's playing. But when they walk off the field, that's a black player suddenly. And that's something that we need to be changing. So we have to work with the hearts and minds of South Africans.
What is the hope of the Nelson Mandela Foundation? You mentioned Madiba and you used one of his quotes, the long walk continues. I mean, his quote about the power of sport to change the world, the power of sport being more powerful than governments in order to change the world. That's been the seed for the Laureate Sport for Good Foundation, which does great work around the world. I mean, what's the hope of the foundation when it comes to leading, the fight against racism, but specifically using sport for that? I like quoting Madiba's letter that he wrote in 1969 when he was writing to his children, and he ends off that letter by saying, "Don't worry about me. I'm healthy. I'm happy, full of strength and hope that one day I'll come out of prison and to spend the rest of my living years with you." Little did Madiba know at the time that he had 20 more years to go in terms of prison life. And if Madiba didn't lose hope back then, who are we to lose hope in terms of the struggle against racism? So we're hoping that those who discriminate will be outed. Those who continue to practice this racism will be outed, and that we will rid South Africa of racism. But we cannot just hope. We must take action against it. Report it to the Human Rights Commission whenever you see it. Go to the equality courts. But you cannot just pin it down to hope. You must take action. And what would that mean on a national sporting level? I mean, you mentioned cricket, rugby, two sports which themselves have had to deal with calls against racism, calls against selecting more players of colour, them showing their support for anti-racism movements. And how are you going to marry those two things? That here you've seen support from the national federations, but also ensuring that our teams are more representative of South Africa.
Well, and thank you for that, because for us, you've just said it cannot be a week thing. It can't be just for a week that we dedicate this thing. That rugby and cricket are just dedicated to and committed to anti-racism work just for a week. And we're saying this needs to be happening every day. So it can't be that they stop next week and they forget about racism, because it's a lived experience for many black people. It's a lived experience for those who cannot even play the sporting code they like, because they don't have resources. And we're saying, let's make this an everyday experience also on the rugby field, on the cricket field, on the soccer field. And then it's only then that we can change the narrative.
Sello, I believe you're going to be going to Sharpeville for the march.
Yes,
now.
I'm rushing there now
okay.
For the march against racism. And we're hoping that South Africans, morning live viewers, will join us in Sharpeville.
All right, to start at what time?
We're starting at 7. So I have to rush there now.
All right, thank you so much for coming in and sharing your thoughts, and all the best of luck with today's festivities, and also as you take this message forward, not just making it a week, but making it an everyday thing.
Thank you very much, Velo.
That's Sello Hatang. He is the CEO of the Nelson Mandela Foundation. It's time to check